Good day, ladies. My name is Wendy, CEO Wendy's Clothing. I'm just making this video to give you a few tips on measurements and some of the things that affect our measurements and affects or disturbs the fitting of a dress when you're done sewing it. So sometimes not because you don't know how to take measurements, but sometimes it's just these little things here and there that affects the measurement, and at the end of the day the dress is having a funny fitting. So I'm just going to dive right into it, and let's see how it goes, because I don't want the video to be ridiculously long. Whenever you're taking measurements for your clients, you need to make sure that your client is wearing a lightweight clothes. What I mean by lightweight clothes is that your client should wear a body fitted clothes, a dress that fits her body perfectly. So a tank top will do the job, and a leggings will do the job. So when you're taking measurements and the person wears something that has maybe a peplum top that has many designs in front, it's definitely going to affect the measurement. And if the person is wearing a jean, it's going to affect the measurement. If the person is wearing a sweatshirt, it's going to affect the measurement. If the person is wearing a suit, it's going to affect the measurement. If the person is wearing any dress that is big at all, it's going to affect the measurement. So but there are tricks. So some of the times you tell your clients, if the person is wearing a suit, you can just say, please take the suit off. If the person is wearing a cardigan, you can ask the client to take it off. But in some cases you're not able to do that. Maybe if you're taking measurements for your client outside, you cannot tell the person to remove his or her maybe sweatshirt or something. So how are you going to take the measurements like that? So what you do is you take the measurement. Take for instance, if you take especially the round measurement, and at the end of the day you measure 44, you can take out 1 inch depending on how thick the dress the person is putting on is. So you can take out ½ inch or 0.75 inch or 1 inch maximum. So that's it. So number 2 is that the person should not be tilted to one position or the other. The person should be standing in the correct position. The person should be standing straight. The leg should not be wide apart or crossed as if she wants to take a picture. So the person should be standing straight. So that should, because tilting to one side is going to affect the length of your client. Another thing is, whenever you're taking the measurements, your client should face front. Let her not look up or down. It's going to affect the length of your client. So your client should be facing forward, and which also boils down to positioning. So your client should be standing in the accurate position in order for the measurements to come out really nicely. So these are some of the tips that you should know when you're taking measurements. And okay, so I'm going to start right now, but before I start, I need to let you know that we have what is called straight measurements, and we have what's called circumference measurement. So the straight measurements are measurements from the shoulder to any other part of the body. Then the circumference measurements are the round measurements, like the bust, the fitting, the waist, the hip, and so on. So we're going to start with taking the straight measurements. When you're taking straight measurements, the shoulder of a human being is not straight, it's slanting. So you have to put your tape on the highest point, which is here, and not here, because the measurement will be affected if you keep it here. So you have to put it here, which is the highest point of the human body. So, and then you pass your tape through the apex of your bust, not here, not here, the apex of your bust, meaning the highest point of your bust. So if you're taking measurements for a blouse, you have to bring your tape under the bust first, then from here you go down. So if you're taking measurements for your blouse, your pencil skirt, or your long gown, or whatever you're taking measurements for, or just make sure that it stops here, because that's the shape, that's the human shape. Alright, then if you're taking measurements for a breast cut, you want to make a breast cut, you put your tape here, of course, and then your tape should stop at the apex of the bust. This is the apex of our bust, where I can see here, right here, okay, right here. That's the apex of her bust. Now you're taking, that's all for straight measurements. If you want to take measurements for skirts, you start from the waist. Now there are several waists. This is the for high waist. If you want to take measurement for high waist, right here. This is her natural waist right here, and this is her hip. So it depends on what the person wants. So you put your tape right here on this part here. On this part, and do like this. No, do like this. Tilt to this side like this. That's how you know where you put your tape. That's how you know where you put your tape. Right there. So right here you put your tape and then you go straight down. Depends on how long to circumference measurement. If you're taking, stand straight. Look there. Don't look at me. If you're taking circumference measurements, your tape has to be on her back. So let me show them like this. Like this. Like this. On her back, and not like this. If you take measurements like this, you're going to get a different figure. So the measurement has to be like this, straight. Also the same thing for the fitting and the waist and the hip. It has to be straight at the back, okay? Another thing is when you're taking measurements, don't allow the tape to be too tight on the client. This is how you know that it's too tight. If you look very well, you see that the tape is making a hole on her body. So that's how you know that it's too tight. And then again, you might not be able to move the tape freely on her body. So you have to give a little space so that you'll be able to move the tape freely on her body. That's how you know that this is her actual measurement. And then you are putting the tape on the apex of her bust, not on the top here, but on the apex of her bust. That's how you know her real measurement. And then again, when you're taking circumference measurement, you should be able to put one finger behind the tape, like I'm doing like this. You should be able to put just one finger and nothing more, just one finger behind the tape. That's how you know that this is her actual size. So for this person now, her bust measurement is 35. The same thing for her fitting, 29. Her fitting is the same thing as under bust. So the fitting is just directly under the bust. Then her waist is on this point, the same point where I showed you. You put your hand right here and you tilt to this side. That's how you know where your waist is. So her waist now is 26, and the waist is usually smaller than the fitting, except the person is pregnant or has just given birth or just has a big stomach. But normally the waist is supposed to be smaller than the fitting. So her waist now is 26 inches. And the same thing for the hip. The hip is the highest point of the lower part of your body. So this is the hip. The same thing. You should be able to move your tape around the hip. And here we have 35 inches. When you're taking measurements for shoulder, the measurement for shoulder is from one end of the shoulder to the other end of the shoulder. So you put your tape roll on one end of the shoulder, not here, not here, not here, but here. If you touch there, you notice a bone there. That's where you should put your tape. That's where you should put your tape, on that bone. To the next one here. So her shoulder is 13 inches. So the same thing for the sleeve. When you're taking your sleeve, you just go straight. The same thing for the round sleeve. When you're taking your round sleeve, you should be able to put one finger and you should be able to move it round. Just depends on what you want. So this is the end of the video. If you have any question, please feel free to ask me. Thank you very much. See you. Bye.